The club was loud until he walked in. Jade Bennett felt it before she saw it. The shift in the air, the way conversations seemed to dip just slightly, like the bass had dropped, but the music hadn't changed. She was mid-spin on the pole, her body moving on autopilot after 3 years of doing this, when the double doors opened and the night changed. A black Mercedes pulled up outside. She could see it through the tinted windows of the club entrance. Expensive. Quiet. The kind of car that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew what it meant. The man who stepped out wore a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than Jade made in 6 months. Dark hair swept back with precision. Sharp jaw that could cut glass. Korean, she thought, watching him move through the crowd like he owned the oxygen in the room. 2 men flanked him, silent, watchful, hands folded in front of them, like soldiers waiting for orders they hoped wouldn't come. He didn't look around, didn't scan the room like the other men did, hunting for something to consume, something to possess for an hour or a night. His eyes found her immediately, locked on with laser focus, and didn't let go. Jade's stomach tightened into a fist. Before we dive deeper into this chaos, real quick, smash that subscribe button because trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. New York? London? Tokyo? I want to know who's riding this roller coaster with me. Now back to Jade's nightmare. She'd seen powerful men before. Drug dealers flush with cash they hadn't earned. Athletes with egos bigger than their bank accounts. CEOs slumming it on business trips, pretending they were different from their boring suburban lives. But this was different. This man looked at her like he'd already decided something important, and she hadn't been consulted, hadn't been asked, hadn't been given a choice. The song ended with a heavy bass drop. She climbed down from the stage, her legs steady despite the unease crawling up her spine like cold fingers. Another girl, Crystal, leaned in as Jade grabbed her silk robe from the hook backstage. "Girl, you see him?" Crystal's voice was pitched high with excitement and fear mixed together in equal measure. "I see him. That's Minjin Lee." Crystal's voice dropped to a whisper, eyes wide as saucers. "I heard he owns half the city, the half the police don't talk about, the half that doesn't exist on paper." Jade's hands stilled on the knot of her robe. Her fingers had gone numb. Mafia? Worse. Crystal's smile was nervous, excited in that dangerous way people got when they were close to something deadly, but not close enough to die yet. Korean mob. The kind of people who don't make threats because threats are for amateurs. They just make you disappear, completely. Like you never existed. Jade's heart kicked hard against her ribs. She should walk away. Go to the dressing room. Lock the door. Let one of the other girls handle whatever this was. Crystal loved danger. Crystal would probably volunteer, but rent was due in 4 days, and Jade was already 2 weeks late. Her landlord had stopped being understanding. Her little sister's tuition payment was overdue by a month. Maya's school had sent 3 emails, each one more threatening than the last. And men like him, men who walked into clubs like they owned the building and everyone in it, they paid well. If you survived the night, if you were smart about it, if you were careful. Before she could decide, before she could turn around and disappear into the back, the club manager, Ricky, appeared at her elbow. His face was tight, professionally pleasant in that specific way that meant he was scared out of his mind but trying to hide it. "Jade, VIP room, now." "Ricky, I don't. He asked for you specifically." Ricky's voice dropped to a harsh whisper, his hand gripping her elbow hard enough to bruise. "By name, your real name, not your stage name." Ice slid down her spine in a cold rush. "I've never seen him before in my life." "Well, he's seen you, and he knows your name." Ricky's hand landed on her shoulder, firm, insistent. Not a request, not even close. "Don't keep him waiting. Men like that don't like to wait, and we don't want to find out what happens when they do." Jade walked toward the VIP section, each step feeling like a choice she couldn't take back. Like stepping off a cliff in slow motion. The red velvet curtain parted under her trembling hand. The room beyond was dimmer, quieter, insulated from the chaos of the main floor by thick walls and expensive soundproofing. Minjin Lee sat on the leather sofa, one arm draped across the back, legs crossed with casual elegance. Relaxed. Comfortable, like he'd been waiting for her his whole life and wasn't bothered by the delay. His 2 guards stood by the door like statues. They didn't look at her, didn't look at anything. Just stood there like furniture that could kill you if it decided to move. Sit. His voice was low, accented, calm. The kind of calm that came from never being told no, from never having to raise your voice because people already knew what happened if they didn't listen. Jade stayed standing, her legs locked, her spine straight. I don't know what you've heard about me, but I don't do private. Sit. It wasn't louder, but something in the way he said it, the absolute certainty, the complete expectation of obedience, made her legs move before her brain caught up. She sat on the opposite end of the sofa, as far from him as the furniture allowed. It wasn't far enough. He studied her for a long moment, not the way other men did, cataloging her body like a menu they were ordering from. He looked at her face, her eyes, like he was reading something written there in a language only he understood. You're afraid, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm cautious. There's a difference. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, something more dangerous. Smart. I like smart. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely between them. The light caught a ring on his finger, black stone with an unfamiliar symbol etched into it. The symbol looked old, important, like something that meant death to the people who recognized it. I don't want what the other men want, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Then what do you want? Your time, nothing more. Jade's laugh came out sharp, disbelieving, bitter. Men like you don't pay for time. You pay for things you can't say out loud. Men like me pay for whatever we want. His eyes didn't leave hers, didn't even blink. Tonight, I want conversation. Your choice if you give it. Your choice. As if she had one. As if saying no to a man who made people disappear was really an option. As if free will existed in a room with guards at the door and a mafia boss studying her like a puzzle he intended to solve. But something in his face, some flicker of genuine patience, something almost human beneath the ice, made her hesitate. $5,000, he said, his voice even and calm. For 3 hours, you talk. I listen. You leave when you want. The door isn't locked. The guards won't stop you. Jade's breath caught in her throat. $5,000. That was 2 months of rent, her sister's tuition, groceries for weeks, new shoes for Maya because her current ones had holes in them, medicine her sister needed but they couldn't afford. Just talking? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Just talking. I give you my word. She should have known better, should have recognized the trap, should have understood that men like him didn't give their word. They gave warnings dressed up as promises. But desperation makes you stupid, and hope makes you blind, and Jade was both. Okay, she whispered. Minjun nodded once, a sharp dip of his chin. He gestured to the guards with 2 fingers. They left without a word, closing the door behind them with a soft click that sounded like a lock even though it wasn't. And then it was just the 2 of them in the quiet room with the distant thump of bass bleeding through the walls. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey from an expensive bottle on the table, the kind of whiskey that came in crystal decanters and cost more per ounce than Jade made per hour. He slid one toward her with careful precision. Tell me about yourself, he said, settling back into the sofa. Why? Because everyone in your life takes from you. Tonight, someone listens. The words hit harder than they should have. Jade picked up the glass with shaking hands. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a good burn, a clean burn. I'm a stripper with a kid sister and too many bills, she said flatly. That's the story. That's all there is. No. His voice was firm but not harsh. That's the situation. The story is why you're still fighting when most people would have given up years ago. Something cracked open in her chest. Something she'd kept locked down and buried for years because letting it out meant admitting how tired she was. How scared. How close to breaking. And God help her. She started talking. She told him about her mother, brilliant and beautiful and broken by a world that didn't care about Black women with dreams bigger than their circumstances. Told him about watching her mother work 3 jobs and still come up short. About finding her mother collapsed in the kitchen one morning, heart attack at 42, body finally giving up under the weight of everything. She told him about Maya, 17 and sharp as a knife, with her mother's brains and none of her defeat. about raising her sister alone since she was 19, about dropping out of college because someone had to pay the bills, about dancing because it was the only job that paid enough to keep them afloat. She told him about the guilt, the shame, the fear that she was failing, that Maya would end up just like her, trapped and desperate and dancing for dollars from men who saw her as a thing to use and discard. Minjun listened like listening was a skill he'd perfected, like every word mattered. He asked questions that made her think, made her dig deeper. He didn't judge, didn't pity, didn't look at her like she was broken or damaged or less than. He just saw her. And somewhere between the second glass of whiskey and the story about Maya's acceptance letter to college that Jade couldn't afford to make real, something shifted. The air between them grew heavier, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. "You're remarkable," Minjun said quietly. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Most people break under less. You're still standing." "I don't have a choice. Maya needs me." "You always have a choice. You chose not to break. That's strength most people will never have." Jade's eyes burned. She looked away because if she kept looking at him, she'd start crying, and she couldn't afford to cry. Crying was for people who had time to fall apart. His hand reached across the space between them, settled on hers, warm, solid, real. "Look at me," he said softly. She did, and the vulnerability in his face shocked her. "I told you I wanted conversation," he continued, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "But that was only half true. I wanted to know if what I felt that first moment I saw you was real, if you were as extraordinary as I thought. And you're more." Her heart was hammering now. Too fast, too hard. "Minjun, I know this is wrong. I know I shouldn't. I know men like me destroy beautiful things because we don't know how to hold them gently." His grip on her hand tightened. "But I'm asking anyway. Can I kiss you?" She should say no, should stand up, should take the money and leave and never look back. But nobody had ever asked her permission before. Nobody had ever looked at her like she was something precious. Something worth asking for. "Yes," she whispered. He moved slowly, giving her time to change her mind. His hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. When his lips met hers, it wasn't rough or demanding or hungry in the way she'd learned to expect from men. It was careful, reverent, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he held on too tight. That scared her more than violence would have. The kiss deepened. Her hands found their way to his jacket, fisting in the expensive fabric. His other hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back as he took the kiss deeper, harder, more desperate. "We can't," she breathed against his mouth, even as her body pressed closer to his. "I know. This is a mistake." "I know." But his hands were pulling her closer, and hers were pushing his jacket off his shoulders, and the world outside the room had stopped existing entirely. What happened next happened fast and slow at the same time. Clothes disappeared. Boundaries dissolved. The leather sofa became their entire universe. When he touched her, it felt like being seen for the first time in her life. Every scar, every insecurity, every broken piece of her that she'd hidden from the world. He touched all of it like it was beautiful. When he whispered her name, her real name, not her stage name, not the persona she wore like armor, it sounded like a prayer. And when it was over, when they lay tangled together on the sofa in the too quiet room, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder, she made the fatal mistake of letting herself feel safe. "What's your real name?" she asked, her voice drowsy and soft. "Your full name." He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Minjun Lee. That's all you need to know. The rest would only scare you." "Minjun," she repeated, testing how it felt in her mouth. It felt right, too right. His arms tightened around her, just slightly, like he was holding on to something he knew he'd have to let go, like he was memorizing the feeling of her body against his. "Sleep," he murmured against her hair. "I'll wake you before morning." She didn't mean to, but exhaustion and the unfamiliar comfort of being held and protected pulled her under like a tide. When she woke 3 hours later, the room was empty. No Minjun, no guards, no warmth beside her. Just $5,000 in crisp bills on the table, stacked and neat and impersonal. Next to it, a business card with a single symbol, the same one from his ring. No name, no number, no message, just the symbol and silence. Jade sat up slowly, pulling her clothes on with shaking hands. Her body ached in ways that reminded her of what they'd done, of what she'd let happen, of what she'd wanted. The money felt heavy in her purse, heavier than paper should feel, heavy like guilt, like shame, like the weight of knowing she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She told herself it didn't matter, that it was always going to end this way, that she'd known better than to expect anything different from a man like him. From any man, really. But walking out of that club into the gray morning light, past the early shift workers and the street cleaners and the world waking up, she felt the absence of him like a wound, like something had been carved out of her chest and taken with him when he left. 3 weeks passed like a slow-motion car crash. Jade went back to work the next night and every night after, smiled at customers with her professional smile, danced under the lights with her body on autopilot, pretended that night had never happened, pretended she didn't look for him in every crowd, pretended she didn't touch the business card hidden in her wallet a dozen times a day. But her body remembered. Her body knew. The first sign was the exhaustion that went bone deep. She'd come home after her shift and collapse on the couch without even taking off her shoes. Maya would find her there in the morning, still in her clothes from the night before, makeup smeared across her face. "You working too hard," Maya said one morning, worry creasing her forehead in a way that made her look too old, too much like their mother. "Just tired, baby. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You look like death." Jade wanted to argue, but she didn't have the energy. Everything took energy she didn't have. The second sign was the nausea. Coffee made her sick. The smell of perfume at the club made her stomach turn. Even her own body wash, lavender and vanilla, the same one she'd used for years, made her gag. She knew. Deep down in that animal part of her brain that recognized danger before logic caught up, she knew. But knowing and accepting were two different countries separated by an ocean of denial. It took 2 more weeks before she bought the test. She waited until Maya was at school, sat on the cold bathroom floor with her back against the tub, and watched the plastic stick like it was a loaded gun pointed at her future. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. The word didn't feel real. It felt like something happening to someone else in some other life where Jade Bennett made different choices. Better choices. Smarter choices. She took 3 more tests just to be sure, all positive, all declaring the same impossible truth. Her hands were numb as she threw them away, buried them at the bottom of the trash under coffee grounds and tissues so Maya wouldn't see, so Maya wouldn't know. So Maya wouldn't look at her with disappointment and realize her big sister was just as stupid as their mother had been. She sat on that bathroom floor for an hour, maybe 2, trying to figure out how this had happened. They'd used protection. She'd been careful. She was always careful because being careless meant ending up exactly where her mother had, drowning in responsibility, crushed under the weight of children she loved but couldn't afford. But apparently, the universe didn't care about careful. The universe had its own plans, and careful was just a word people used to feel better about having no control. She thought about her options, turned them over in her mind like cards in a deck she couldn't win with no matter how she played them. Abortion. The word felt heavy in her mind. She could barely afford groceries, let alone a procedure that cost hundreds of dollars she didn't have. And even if she could scrounge and borrow and steal enough, the thought of it made something in her chest crack open and bleed. Adoption. Give the baby to someone who could actually provide. Someone with a house in the suburbs and a savings account and a future that didn't involve dancing for dollars. Someone who deserved a child more than she did. Or keep it. Raise it. Add another impossibility to the pile of impossibilities she was already carrying on her back. She didn't decide that day, or the next day, or the day after that. But as the weeks crawled forward and her body changed in small, undeniable ways, the slight swell of her stomach, the tenderness in her breasts, the way food tasted different, the decision made itself. She was keeping it. Not because she had a plan, not because she thought she could handle it. Not because she'd magically figured out how to make money appear, or time multiply, or her life become something other than a constant struggle, but because the idea of not keeping it felt like giving up the only good thing that might ever come from that night, the only piece of Minjun she'd ever have. The only proof that for 3 hours, someone had seen her and wanted her and made her feel like she mattered. She didn't try to find Minjun, didn't even consider it. What would she say? Hey, remember that one-night stand 3 months ago? Surprise, you're going to be a father? Men like him didn't do fatherhood. They did power and money and violence and control. They didn't do diapers and daycare and midnight feedings and parent-teacher conferences. Besides, he'd made it clear. He'd left without a word, no number, no way to reach him. Just money and a business card with a symbol she didn't understand. That was the answer. That was him saying this meant nothing. She was on her own, like always. 2 months after that night, 4 months total since the night that changed everything, Jade was working a Tuesday shift. The slow kind where the music felt too loud and the lights too bright and every minute dragged like an hour. She was tired, bone deep, soul-crushing tired. The kind of tired that came from growing a human being while dancing in 6-inch heels and pretending everything was fine. Her feet ached constantly now. Her back hurt in new and creative ways. And hiding the small bump under loose clothing was getting harder every day. She just finished a set, was heading backstage to sit down for 5 blessed minutes and drink some water when the club went quiet. Not completely silent. The music still played its heavy bass rhythm. People still talked and laughed and drank. But there was a shift, that same shift from 4 months ago, and Jade's blood turned to ice in her veins. She turned slowly, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. The double doors opened like the gates of hell. Black Mercedes, same car, same man, same nightmare returning. Minjun Lee walked into the club like he'd never left, flanked by his guards, moving through the crowd with that same terrifying calm. But something was different this time. His jaw was tighter, his eyes harder. This wasn't a man looking for conversation. This was a man on a mission. His eyes found her immediately across the crowded room. And this time there was no curiosity in them, no patience, no gentleness, just cold, absolute certainty, and something that looked dangerously close to possession. Jade's legs locked. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide in the dressing room, to disappear into the crowd, to pretend she hadn't seen him, to rewind 4 months and make different choices. But she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as he crossed the distance between them in long, purposeful strides. He stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker, something that made her stomach flip for reasons that had nothing to do with morning sickness. "We need to talk." His voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge to it, something sharp and dangerous underneath. "I don't have anything to say to you." Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "Yes, you do." His hand moved, not toward her, but to his jacket pocket. He pulled out a photograph, slid it across the space between them without breaking eye contact. It was a picture of her, leaving a clinic. 2 weeks ago, when she'd gone for her first prenatal appointment. The image was clear, professional, taken by someone who knew what they were doing. The world tilted sideways, the music faded, the lights dimmed. Everything narrowed to that photograph and the man holding it. "How?" Her voice broke. "I've had people watching you since the night we met," Minjun said, his voice still low, still controlled, still terrifying in its absolute calm. "I needed to know if you were safe, if anyone was threatening you, if you needed anything." "Safe?" The word came out sharp, panicked, angry. "You had me followed? You invaded my privacy? You're carrying my child." The club noise faded completely. Everything faded except his voice and the truth hanging between them like a blade. "You don't know that," she whispered, but the denial sounded weak even to her own ears. "Yes, I do." He stepped closer, crowding her space, making it impossible to think. The timing, the test, the clinic appointment, the way you're hiding your stomach under loose clothes. "I know everything, Jade. Everything." Her name in his mouth felt like ownership, like a chain snapping closed around her neck. "I don't want your money," she said, hating how her voice shook, hating how weak she sounded. "I'm not trying to trap you. I wasn't even going to tell you. So just leave me alone. Pretend this never happened." Something flickered across his face. Not anger. Something worse. Something that looked like hurt mixed with fury. "You think I'm here because of obligation?" he asked softly, dangerously. "You think I came here to throw money at you and disappear?" I don't know why you're here. I don't know what you want from me. He moved closer still, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him, close enough that his presence felt like a physical thing, pressing against her, making it hard to breathe, making it impossible to think clearly. That night meant something, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. To me? Not just to you. Do you understand? Then why did you leave? The question burst out of her, raw and bleeding. Why did you disappear without a word? Why did you make me feel like I was nothing? Pain flashed across his face. Real pain. Human pain. Because men like me don't get to keep beautiful things. We destroy them. It's what we do. It's all we know how to do. His jaw tightened. I thought leaving would keep you safe from my world, from the violence and the blood and the enemies who would use you to hurt me. I don't need you to keep me safe. Yes, you do. The certainty in his voice was absolute, now more than ever. The certainty made her angry, made her brave in the stupid, reckless way that fear sometimes did, made her forget for a moment who she was talking to. I've been taking care of myself my whole life, she snapped, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. I raised my sister. I survived my mother's death. I worked 3 jobs while going to school. I don't need some gangster deciding what's best for me. You're right. His hand lifted, hovering near her face, but not touching, asking permission even now. You don't need me. You're strong enough to survive anything. But my child does. And whether you like it or not, Jade, whether you accept it or fight it, that makes you mine to protect. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. Yes, he said softly, dangerously, with absolute conviction. You are. You became mine the moment you let me touch you. The moment you fell asleep in my arms. The moment my child started growing inside you. The guards shifted behind him, moving slightly closer. The club was watching now. Everyone pretending not to stare while hanging on every word. Crystal was watching from the bar, eyes wide, phone probably recording. Jade's heart hammered against her ribs so hard it hurt. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, wanted to rewind 4 months and make different choices, wanted to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare. But there was nowhere to run, not from this, not from him, not from the future growing inside her. What do you want from me? She whispered, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach in a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Minjin's eyes tracked the movement. Something in his expression softened for just a moment before the ice returned. I want you to come with me, tonight, now. No delays, no goodbyes that take days, now. And if I say no? His hand finally touched her face, cupping her cheek with devastating gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. His thumb traced her cheekbone in a gesture that was painfully familiar, painfully intimate. Then I'll make sure you're protected anyway. Guards outside your apartment 24 hours a day. Eyes on you every second. Cameras, security. You'll be safe, Jade, but you'll never be free again. You'll live in a cage built of bulletproof glass and armed men. That's not protection. That's a prison. Yes, he agreed without hesitation. But it's a prison that keeps you alive, that keeps my child alive. And I can live with you hating me if it means you're breathing. Jade's breath caught in her throat. She searched his face for some sign that this was a bluff, some hint that she still had power here, some indication that her choices still mattered. But his eyes were steady, unblinking, absolute. The eyes of a man who'd made a decision and wouldn't be swayed by tears or pleading or logic. I have a sister, she said desperately, grasping at anything. Maya, she's 17. She needs me. I can't just leave her. She's counting on me. She'll be taken care of, better than you could ever manage on a stripper salary. His voice was matter of fact, not cruel. School paid for, full ride to any university she wants. Apartment, security, everything. She'll have more opportunities than she ever would have had otherwise. You can't just, I can. I have. It's already done. The money's already been transferred. Her tuition is paid through graduation. She has a new apartment waiting. Safe, secure, in a building I own. His hand stayed on her face. I take care of what's mine, Jade. And like it or not, whether you accept it or fight it, you're carrying the only thing in this world that matters more to me than power. Why? The word broke on her lips. Why does it matter so much? You barely know me. It was one night, one mistake. For the first time since he'd walked in, something vulnerable flickered across his face. Something almost human beneath the ice and control and violence. Something that looked like loneliness. "Because I've spent my entire life building an empire," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion he usually kept buried. "And empires are empty, cold. They're built on blood and fear and death. But you." His hand moved from her face to her stomach, resting there over the barely there swell she'd been hiding under loose clothes. "This is legacy. This is something real, something that can't be taken or destroyed or bought. This is the first thing I've ever wanted that wasn't about survival or power or revenge." Tears burned in Jade's eyes. She hated them, hated that his words touched something deep inside her. Hated that part of her, the stupid, desperate part that had never had a father, that had raised herself and her sister alone, wanted to believe him. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I know. You should be. I don't trust you. You shouldn't. I'm a dangerous man who does terrible things." His hand stayed on her stomach, warm and possessive. "But you don't have a choice anymore. The moment my enemies find out about this child, and they will find out, they always find out, you become a target. The moment they know I care about something, they'll try to take it, to hurt it, to use it against me. The only way you survive this is with me, under my protection, in my world." "That's not fair." The tears spilled over now, hot and angry. "No," Minjun agreed, his thumb wiping away a tear with surprising gentleness. "It's not. Nothing about this is fair. But fair doesn't keep you alive. Fair doesn't protect my child. Only I can do that." He stepped back, giving her space she didn't want and couldn't use. His hand dropped from her stomach, and the loss of it felt wrong. Empty. "I'll give you 1 hour," he said, his voice returning to that controlled calm. "Go home. Say goodbye to your sister. Pack what you need. But understand this, Jade. After tonight, your old life ends. You don't work here anymore. You don't live in that apartment. You don't exist in any database or system my enemies can access. Jade Bennett dies tonight, and someone new is born." "And if I refuse?" She needed to ask, even though she already knew the answer. Minjun's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went darker, colder, more absolute. "Then I'll carry you out of here myself, and you'll wake up in my home anyway, but you'll hate me for it, and I'd prefer you didn't. I'd prefer you came willingly, but your preference isn't required. Your safety is." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise, a statement of fact. The sky is blue, water is wet. Jade Bennett belongs to Minjun Lee now. Jade looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth written in every line of his face. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't negotiating. He'd already decided her fate. The only choice she had was whether she walked into her new life or was dragged into it, kicking and screaming. 1 hour, she whispered, her voice defeated. Minjun nodded once. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a phone. Brand new. Expensive. Still in the box. My number is programmed in. The only number. The only contact. He pressed it into her shaking hands. "When you're ready, call. My men will come for you. They'll help you pack. They'll make sure Maya understands. They'll make sure everything is handled." He turned to leave, got 3 steps away, then stopped. Without looking back, his voice carried across the space between them. "You don't get to disappear anymore, Jade. Not from me. Not from this. You're in my world now, and in my world, I protect what's mine." And then he was gone, his guards following like shadows, the doors closing behind them with a finality that sounded like a cell door locking. The club exhaled collectively, conversations resumed, music kept playing, life continued. But Jade stood frozen in the middle of the floor, phone clutched in her shaking hands, Minjun's words echoing in her head like a verdict. "You don't get to disappear anymore." She looked down at her stomach, at the tiny life growing inside her, at the future she thought she was building alone, at the choices she thought she had, and realized with crystalline, terrifying clarity she'd never been alone. Not for a single moment since that night. He'd been watching, waiting, planning, preparing to claim what was his. And now the cage was closing. The beautiful, terrifying, inescapable cage. Wait, don't you dare scroll away yet. If your heart is pounding right now, if you need to know what Jade does next, that subscribe button is your best friend. Hit it. Smash that like button so this story reaches more people who love this drama as much as you do. And listen, I need you to comment right now. Tell me, Do you think Jade should run, or should she trust Minjun? Is he protecting her or trapping her? I'm reading every single comment, and honestly, some of you have theories that blow my mind. Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me when I say, you haven't seen anything yet. The real storm is just beginning. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you in the next one, if you can handle it.